He was opening the champagne when the cork accidentally hit the chandelier, and the falling crystal shattered the glass of the dance floor. Unaware, people continued to dance wildly, completely oblivious to the cracks spreading beneath their feet. The resonance from the overload even caused the steel rivets to break free. Seeing her fiancé hanging by a thread, Alice rushed to ask for help, but everyone was too busy fleeing and couldn't care less about her. In the end, her fiancé fell. The banquet hall had descended into chaos. Guests were frantically searching for an escape. One woman accidentally knocked over the chef's hot pot, and flames to it, cramming it to full capacity, forgetting that the elevator could only hold 8 people. But this time, Alice was a step too slow, and was shoved aside by an elderly man struggling to walk. He soon met his fate. The elevator was already packed, and the waiter told him to wait for the next one, but the elderly man wasn't foolish, and forced his way in, only to be trapped by the door. The elevator finally couldn't bear the weight. With half the restaurant now in flames, the remaining survivors fled to the other side, but in doing so, they broke the balance. The bottles of liquor on the tables fell, and the ceiling above cracked. The right side of the hall fractured from the shift in weight. Luckily, Alice was close to the break, and once again narrowly escaped. She tried to reach out to save someone, but it was too late. Fortunately, this glass was sturdier than the one on the floor, allowing her to briefly escape with her life. But Death's performance was just beginning. A strange noise came from behind, and everyone's gaze turned to the swaying piano. Also swaying was the deadly coin on the chandelier. It landed precisely on the piano, becoming the last straw that broke the camel's back. With the building collapsing under the weight of thousands of tons of shoddy construction, Alice became the sole survivor, but now trapped hundreds of meters in the air. Death was only a matter of time. At that moment, the boy who had been locked in the metal cabinet by his mother emerged. Alice then realized she was not alone. Though hope was lost, she rushed to save the boy. Before the other half of the hall collapsed, the two jumped together. The shattered debris turned the ground into a hellish pit, and Alice's engagement ring got caught between 2 steel rods on the stone wall. They were suspended in midair. Their combined weight soon made Alice's finger snap. College student Caitlin suddenly woke up. This was the same nightmare she had been having for 2 months. What was even stranger was that the woman named Alice in the dream was actually her grandmother. You heard that right. Alice, who fell from the tower, didn't die. What she went through would slowly be revealed in the plot. Every night Caitlin woke up from the nightmare. Her long-term insomnia caused her grades to plummet. To escape the nightmare once and for all, she had to find her missing grandmother. But her father claimed to have never met her, and even Caitlin's mother had run away 10 years ago. At this point, her younger brother was preparing to visit their uncle, thinking there might be clues about grandma there, so Caitlin went with him. At first, her uncle was very warm, but when she mentioned Grandma Alice, his face suddenly changed, and he harshly called Alice a crazy woman, telling her not to get involved. Caitlin was puzzled. How could anyone speak so ill of their own mother?
After our father died, Iris just snapped. She wouldn't let us go to school. She locked us inside the house. She obsessed about all the horrific ways we could die. And the state came in and they took your mother and I away from her. But it didn't end there. She tracked us all through foster care. And when the kids were born, she started sending us these horrible letters that were full of obituaries and these disturbing pictures of dead bodies.
We had to move so she couldn't contact us anymore.
Caitlin wanted to see those photos, but her uncle didn't want to say anymore, so she turned to her aunt for help. After some persuasion, her aunt finally relented and told her the letters from Grandma were hidden in a drawer in the dining room. Opening the box, there was a photo of Grandma Alice with Grandpa, with the background being the same Sky restaurant in her dream. This proved it wasn't a dream. Following the address on the envelope, Caitlin drove to Grandma's house. Everything about the place was strange. The roof was covered in sharp spikes, and the yard was surrounded by roadblocks made of branches. It was less of a home, and more like a doomsday fortress. But from the moment she stepped in, death had already begun its plan.
Shut the door. Quick, quick!
When Grandma learned Caitlin's reason for coming, her eyes widened, because not only was it Caitlin's nightmare, but also her own premonition. It turns out that before the accident occurred, Alice had already sensed the disaster was coming. Looking at the mischievous child by her side, and her boyfriend proposing to her, everything was exactly as it had been in her vision. She immediately realized this wasn't a hallucination.
Everyone's going to die. The whole building is going to come down.
Are you serious?
The penny.
Seeing the mischievous child about to throw the coin, Alice quickly rushed forward, grabbed the coin from his hand, and ran downstairs. Using a pot lid, she smothered the chef's flame. At this moment, cracks on the glass quickly spread. Alice immediately ran to the stage and shouted at everyone to evacuate, or the glass beneath their feet would shatter at any moment. At first, the security guards thought she was crazy, but when they saw the cracks beneath their feet, they all left the scene. However, the disaster did not end there. Alice's intervention saved the people who should have died, and in the following years, death slowly took away the survivors of that night, including Alice's husband. From that point on, she never let her 2 children go outside, and spent all her time researching strange ways to die. Her house was a refuge she built herself. Alice had hidden for 30 years, and had already learned to predict death's every move. She could even sense its presence, but death could do nothing to her. So it gave her cancer 2 months ago, and it just so happened that Caitlin started having recurring nightmares around the same time. Alice concluded her granddaughter had inherited her premonition, but when Alice turned around, she accidentally touched a magnifying glass. The focused sunlight reflected onto a metal plate, and precisely hit the rope beside it. At the bottom of the rope hung the flower pot.
I see you, you fuck.
Years of survival experience made Alice alert in an instant. No potential danger could escape her eyes. She summarized all her experiences into a notebook, hoping Caitlin would stay to learn, because once she died, death would come for her family. These absurd words terrified Caitlin. Her uncle was right. Grandma was indeed crazy. She was about to leave, but Alice quickly said, "At least take the notebook." But Caitlin ran out the door. Alice wanted to chase after her, but when she reached the door, she suddenly stopped. Looking at the ominous wind outside, she quickly realized death had set a trap outside. If she stepped out, she would surely die. But to protect the last bloodline of her family, she still stepped out. After all, her time was running out. She held back her fear and shoved the notebook into Caitlin's arms.
You still don't believe me?
The next day, a funeral was held for Alice. After this, Caitlin finally started believing her grandmother's words. At that moment, a long-lost RV appeared in the distance. Caitlin's mother, May, finally showed up, but Caitlin scowled, thinking her mother had never fulfilled her responsibilities. She angrily went home to investigate. In order to understand death, she opened my account page and watched all 5 parts of my Final Destination explanations. Meanwhile, to celebrate her sister's return, her uncle held a family gathering at his house. Little did they know, the whole yard was already enveloped in death's shadow. Her cousin accidentally broke a glass, but while cleaning up, he didn't notice the glass shards mixing into the ice. Later, he mistakenly added the shark shards into a drink. When everyone raised their glasses, her cousin suddenly choked.
Are you alright?
Oh my god, there's a bug in there.
Luckily, it was just a false alarm, but for Caitlin, a bad omen had appeared. She immediately rushed to her uncle's house, calling her brother Charlie the whole way, but Charlie was jumping on the trampoline and didn't hear his phone. Worse still, a sharp rake was lying under the trampoline. The trampoline was already poor quality, and her uncle insisted on joining in. Luckily, May was quick enough and stopped them in time, pulling the rake from under the bed. And
the former things have passed away.
the deaths of the family members might be accidents, but for everyone to die in accidents is impossible. This made Caitlin even more certain of her grandmother's warning. She took out the notebook and started flipping through it. The first page of the notebook was the same coin that Grandma Alice had snatched from the mischievous child. Death coin. Every following page documented various bizarre and strange deaths, including the logging truck incident in part 2 and the plane crash in part 1. Even more chilling was a scene from her uncle's family accident. Caitlin put all the information together and came to a terrifying conclusion. She told her family that because of Alice's intervention, the people who should have died survived. Then those survivors had children, but they were never meant to exist. So death would come to collect them one by one, and those who died in the first 5 parts were all descendants of the survivors from the Sky Restaurant. In other words, Alice was the source of it all. Based on Caitlin's deduction, death would collect them in order of age, because there were too many survivors back then, and death had spent years gathering the list. When it was Alice's turn, she hid in the safe house, blocking death for decades. As long as she was alive, it wouldn't be her descendants' turn. This was the only way to protect her family, but now that Alice was dead, death would start the collection according to age. The first to go was the older uncle, except for Caitlin's father and aunt, who weren't related to Alice by blood. Everyone else was on death's list.
Makes its way down each branch by age. So because Uncle Howard was the oldest, it'll start with his family first, meaning Eric, you're next.
Go fuck yourself.
Then it'll go for Julia, then Bobby. Then it'll come for our branch, starting with Darlene, then me, then Charlie.
Charlie,
Hearing these absurd words, everyone thought Caitlin had been brainwashed by Alice and had turned into a crazy person. They were about to leave angrily, but they didn't know the real danger was about to come. That night, her cousin Eric returned to work at the tattoo shop. After sending off the last customer, he played some heavy metal music. He grabbed alcohol-based sanitizer to clean up, completely unaware that the ornament on the speaker was swaying with the music. Because the shop was so hot, he casually turned on the fan, which became a setup for disaster. At that moment, Caitlin sent him a text warning him to be careful, but he didn't take it seriously, and just sent back a friendly reply. Looking at the screen with his father's words, Eric, lost in emotion, changed to a song that expressed longing. While wiping away his tears, he got his father's name tattooed on his hand, just as he was immersed in sadness. The next morning, Caitlin couldn't shake off her worries about her cousin. She drove to his house, but Charlie received news about the fire at the tattoo shop. As Caitlin lost focus for a second, she accidentally ran into a pedestrian.
Ow! What? You trying to kill me?
Eric?
Unexpectedly, Eric was unscathed. Caitlin was puzzled. Why did death spare him?
Yeah, firefighters said I was lucky as fuck that I was wearing that leather jacket. Barely got burned.
Eric thought Caitlin was overreacting. How could death exist in this world? But just as he finished speaking,
Crazy. Jeez! Shit!
though it was a false alarm, Caitlin felt more and more that danger was lurking everywhere. The tools for trimming branches by the roadside, and the soccer ball under the children's feet, could take his life at any moment. The three of them arrived at the door, and happened to meet the cousin preparing for a morning run. At that moment, a garbage truck stopped next to them. Caitlin warned Eric not to get too close, or it would crush them into a pulp, but he didn't care, and even mocked the garbage truck. After mocking death, nothing happened. Her cousin thought they were being ridiculous, and continued with her morning run. Little did she know, Death's real show was about to begin.
I'm coming for our family.
The three rushed forward, because after the garbage truck finished picking up the trash, the compartment would compress. If they didn't hurry, her cousin would be crushed. Caitlin didn't hesitate to climb onto the truck. Since the driver was wearing headphones, listening to music and browsing women, he couldn't hear their shouts. At this point, Caitlin was already on the truck's roof. The brothers quickened their pace, and blocked the garbage truck with their bodies, but they only made it worse. The truck's braking inertia caused her cousin to fall against incident. The family finally believed Caitlin, but Caitlin was confused. Why did Death skip her cousin, and go straight for her cousin Julia? At this point, her aunt finally revealed the long-hidden secret.
Eric isn't Howard's biological son. So I didn't say anything to you, and yet my little girl is dead.
Well, I don't understand where you had an affair.
Your father and I were having such a hard time. But it was good because I got you. I got you out of it.
Then who's my real dad?
Jerry Fenbury.
Oh, Jared Fenbury?
Yes.
No, Jerry fucking Fenbury?
To think that Death also has paternity testing abilities. I don't know whether Eric should be happy or sad, but the more important matter now is who Death's next target is. It's time for Baby. Caitlin quickly flipped through the notebook, trying to find useful clues, and she did find a person named Giba, who had managed to escape Death's pursuit. Perhaps he had a solution. May remembered that Alice had mentioned him. He worked at a hospital not far from here, so the family decided to go together. On the way, May confessed the truth about leaving home. It turned out that under Grandma's influence, she had also become paranoid. As the siblings grew up, she began to worry that if things continued this way, the kids would repeat her tragic childhood. That's when she decided to leave home. After hearing this, Caitlin finally understood. Soon, they arrived at the hospital and found Giba. He wasn't just the NPC from the previous films, but also the boy Alice had saved in her premonition. All these years, he had been fighting Death alongside Alice, so he knew the rules of Death inside out. Giba told them, to escape Death's pursuit, there were two choices. One was to follow the worker's path in part 5, and kill an innocent person to buy a chance at life, or like Kimberly in part 2, temporarily stop the heart, and then be saved. But this method was very risky. If Death caught on to the deception, it would be a much worse death. In fact, Giba hadn't escaped Death's pursuit. He was still alive, simply because he was after Alice. He had to wait for Alice's family to be completely collected before his time would come. For him, instead of hiding in fear, it was better to enjoy his final days. After he said that, he left the hospital. Not long after, Giba's actor Tony Todd passed away from cancer. Giba's words left everyone in confusion, because they couldn't accept either method. While they were lost, Eric brought Baby to the maternity ward. Clearly, killing a baby would at least buy several decades of life, but it was too cruel. Baby couldn't do it, so the only choice left was to replicate Kimberly's near-death experience. Thus, the two started their dangerous plan. Since Baby had a severe peanut allergy, strategy. Eric planned to make him eat a whole box of peanut chocolate, wait for the allergic reaction to choke him, then have the doctors save him. But unexpectedly, the plan started off with failure. The vending machine malfunctioned, and the chocolate got stuck inside. Angry, Eric began to punch the machine, and in a few hits, the glass broke. This seemingly trivial action became the prelude to the later tragedy. Then came more shaking, and the machine finally spit out the chocolate. The two rushed into the MRI room. Eric planned to get a wheelchair, but when he closed the door, it triggered the death switch. The MRI machine slowly powered on, like the devil's eye staring at baby. Before long, Eric returned with the wheelchair, and neither of them noticed the strange happening. To ensure his brother entered a near-death state, Eric deliberately took the life-saving adrenaline away. After some internal struggle, baby finally ate the peanut chocolate. As soon as he swallowed, his body began to react. By survival instinct, he grabbed the adrenaline from Eric's hand. Meanwhile, the MRI machine's magnetic force reached its limit. If it was to break the limit, it had to be manually operated. At this moment, Eric's phone was pulled into the machine, and the safety restriction was lifted. It wasn't over. Baby's adrenaline was still in Eric's hands. As the magnetic force continued to intensify, the nurse at the front desk noticed the abnormality. Metal objects were all sticking to the door. She thought Magneto had arrived at the hospital, and came to check the magnetic direction. At the same time, baby was struggling to crawl over, and snatched the adrenaline from Eric's hand, thus saving his life. But the scene had completely spiraled out of control. The magnetic force reached level 7.
Oh my god. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Caitlin's family arrived and witnessed baby's death, just as Giba had said. Although Eric wasn't related to the uncle by blood, he had disrupted Death's plan and had to pay the price. Now, the uncle's family was completely wiped out, and next in line was Caitlin's family. They didn't want to wait for Death. She planned to lock herself in a safe house, just like Alice. As long as she survived, Death wouldn't come after the two kids. The siblings decided to escort their mother, hoping Caitlin's premonition would help. But just before they were about to leave, the death coin fell out of the notebook and was picked up by an elderly woman. This also foreshadowed future events. The group had an unlucky start and almost caused an accident.
You should drive.
Luckily, after switching drivers, they safely arrived at Grandma's house, but the house exuded an eerie atmosphere. Looking at the flashing wires on the roof, Caitlin's instincts told her Death was about to act. She stepped on the gas and drove straight in, but as the car stopped, an object fell from the roof and broke Caitlin's seatbelt, trapping her in the seat. Caitlin told May to hurry inside, because as long as she was alive, nothing would happen to her. But Death wouldn't easily let her in. The sparks on the roof ignited the weeds, and a lot of embers scattered in the wind. The flower pot that had been burned by the magnifying glass was about to fall. Just as May opened the door, the flower pot dropped and broke the gas pipe. The gas blast flipped the RV, and the water pond flooded the driver's seat. The seatbelt, which was supposed to save her life, became Caitlin's death sentence. Meanwhile, the wooden stake crushed her brother, and the power pole nearby was swaying. It seemed like Death intended to wipe them all out. Just then, her injured mother crawled over and used her last ounce of strength to lift the hot wooden plank, saving Charlie in the time to grieve, and quickly climbed onto the roof to save his sister. He pulled out a small knife and cut his sister's seatbelt. By this time, Caitlin was on the brink of death. Fortunately, Charlie didn't give up. After performing chest compressions, he pulled her back from the edge of death. The siblings cried in joy, because Caitlin had been saved from near death. She broke Death's curse, and now they were safe. But was this truly the case? 2 months later, Charlie also found his other half. As Caitlin helped him adjust his boutonniere, her finger was pricked by a rose thorn. The familiar fear spread over her body. At the same time, the elderly woman who had picked up the death coin was buying lemonade by the street. When she opened her wallet, the death coin fell out. It rolled down the stairs and got stuck in the gap of the railroad track switch. At that moment, Charlie's future father-in-law passed by and casually mentioned how Charlie had saved his near-death sister. But as a doctor, he pointed out the siblings' misconception. If chest compressions could bring a drowning victim back to life, then their heart must have still been beating. They were just temporarily unconscious. It couldn't be considered a true resurrection. The siblings immediately felt their hair stand on end. Just then, a speeding train roared